Here to provide you with the secrets to body shop profits, the Dealer Handbook, is Scott Rome, president of Rome Technologies, Inc. Please give him a warm welcome.
Welcome. My name is Scott Rome, and I am so proud to be here at the NADA 100th anniversary. Today we're going to talk about the greatest profession in the automotive industry, collision repair. With autonomous vehicles coming on the scene, collision avoidance systems coming on the scene, the amount of claims that are going to be happening in our industry are going to go down, and the competition is going to get harder. So it is our time now to strike, to improve our businesses. Without an increase in manpower overhead, there are so many exciting benefits that you can see. The first and foremost is to take the dealership handbook in this webinar and in this workshop and learn about how to increase profits by 30 to 50%. With no increase again in manpower overhead, adding another 8 or 12 to the net. Wow, that all sounds pretty exciting. Are you guys listening yet? Well, let's take a look. How about a net profit of 15% minimum as a C shop? So where could you really go? Take a look at your numbers and see where you fall into the grid. So here's your first scorecard, and we have numerous scorecards that we offer. The first one we're going to go through today is where you start on your profitability of that shop. And from the rest of our discussions, we will learn about staffing, best practices, and of course technology to allow you to realize your full potential. Staffing is the very first part, having the right people in the right job description to both maximize information flow as well as, of course, accuracy and timeliness of that information. Next, you have best practices, doing the things you need to do consistently to maintain the attribute of solving the number one building block and stumbling block of our industry, that every job is custom. How do we do that? We use technology. And that technology is going to provide a track to run on so we can all work in a unified setup, all on the same page at the same time, so that questions don't become the burden, answers do. So let's get started. First, we're going to talk about staffing. And in staffing, take a look at your scorecard. 9%, it's an A shop. That's against cost of sales. These numbers come from over 900 stores that we have the pleasure to serve, and we glean this information as a generic tool to help you understand where you fit in the pecking order of best in class. Now, in staffing, there are 4 jobs in every body shop in America: parts, production, customer service, and writer. Doesn't matter how big you are, whether you're the biggest shops in the industry or you're just a mom and pop. Those are still the same 4 job descriptions, and each one has a unique impact in daily operations. Now, when they're all working together the way they should, you have a smooth running machine. So let's take a look at each one of those job descriptions, their impact, and how we can better improve the staffing of our shop. First, we have our scorecard again, looking at the revenue stream per individual that impacts the staff number of our organization. As an example, $300,000 shop, 6 people, you're running at $50,000 per admin per month. A C shop. Why is that a C shop, and how can we improve that to the B and A shops that you see on your screen? Well, first, we look at customer service. Now, interesting thing about customer service, they're the ones that take the information coming from the insurance companies as assignments. And wouldn't it be nice to know the volume of assignments that you have? And in that way, we need to understand how good they are on the phone, how many you received and how many got to the door, so you can do that belly-to-belly selling that is so important to get the keys. So in this case, we need to look at phone skills. And those ratios are very important. So customer service has a very important role in bringing in those opportunities. Now, they have a number of other tasks, as you see, that they can do, but many of these tasks are now being handled by the writer, as we'll see in a moment. Wow, 25% for a writer, and that's the impact he has. You'd think it'd be so much more, considering the role of creating the revenue, but truly it's just a small piece of the pie. But notice that a writer has an awesome opportunity to increase the net profit of your company in the very beginning, because during the drop-off, the only time the customer has not turned their back and become frustrated with you, because that relationship is now very fresh and young, that's when the upsell comes into play. And that upsell opportunity only comes once before everything goes to heck in a handbasket, as we know in many of our shops. They also are instrumental in doing the blueprint. And that blueprint is the core of respecting the single stumbling block of our industry, that every job is custom. Imagine this. Most shops spike their revenue at the end of the month, but going through a blueprint process, guess what? the tickets are closed before we begin the repair. Now that's a game changer. And keep in mind, they also maintain communications with the insurance company and the customer. But again, not as big an impact as you would think. Take a look at what writers do. Now, in this scenario that you see before you, a writer writing $100,000 a month is considered a C writer. But how is it that one writer doing $100,000 a month is C, where the guy who works just as hard is doing $200,000 a month and he's an A shop? Well, think about what that impact is. And why does that happen? Well, first, someone who's doing $100,000 a month continues to go back to the same RO over and over again, adding revenues to that repair. Where someone who's working just as hard, respecting the blueprint, and respecting our stumbling block most of all, that every job is custom, is one and done. So they take the time to see the full vision of the pre-collision condition vehicle before they begin the process. And that in mind, that leads us to the next part. Again, we used an example of $300,000 a month in a 6-member front office shop. You'd be surprised to know that most of you who are watching this video will notice that they only have one parts guy. One parts guy. The other, he's handling 45% of your revenue, and you've got one guy. What are the other 5 people doing all this time? Interestingly enough, every mistake in that parts department is $1 off the bottom line, and every mistake in that parts department is a production issue. Let me leave you with one thought if you gain nothing from the video. A great body shop has a great parts department. It is the core of how to get this shop on its feet. Let's take a look at your scorecard. And when you take a look here, you notice immediately where you stand and where your bottlenecks are and how to overcome them. Staffing, having the right people in the right job description is the game changer. Now we have production. They dispatch the cars, do the payroll, QC the work. Not as important as you would think, probably more like a bigger problem than you would think. Notice that they're the bottleneck in communications. Notice that that conduit requires another layer of communication to get the facts and the important and often urgent information to the right people. So clearly it's inefficient and it creates bottlenecking. And then in the next generation of shops that are running best in class, they've gone to a teaming model where we've eliminated the middleman and allowed that communication stream to flow freely, both between the technician and the writer. And remember, the greatest body shop in the world, no matter where you are in America, isn't the guy doing $1 million a month or $500,000 a month. Believe it or not, it's the gentleman, the old mom and pop with one owner, 2 body men and a painter, where you have such a high degree of communications between the team that things flow beautifully. And the insurance company would prefer to work with them if it didn't have so much overhead to manage so many relationships. They like one relationship. So big shops really are the scalable model you see on the screen, a lot of little body shops under one roof. And that is how the industry has grown to best in class and being able to maintain the cycle time requirements of our insurance companies. Teaming. It is absolutely an important step in making your shop perform at its highest level. When you think about teaming, you realize it becomes scalable. So as your needs to grow, as the income streams increase, it gives you a model to build your shop in a structured way that's understandable and easy to build. It also maximizes the flow of information, i.e. expanding your bandwidth and optimizing your quality and your accuracy of information that you'll be working with. Because never doubt, information is power, and he who has it first is going to be able to work with it faster. Notice the new model. We've integrated now writers and production. And look at the benefit that that brings. It brings not only the communication we've talked about and the streamlined efficiencies, but it allows that one job description to be considerably more powerful than the other 2 on their own, as you see before you. So how do we get there? Well, you've got to train the folks. And then you've got to monitor and provide some type of quantitative analysis so we know that they're consistent in maintaining their work responsibilities. And then we have to benchmark them and then support them through reviews to understand where they are and how to take them to the next level of their scorecard. And ultimately, there's consulting and, of course, finally collaboration. 20 groups that allow them to share their ideas and work in concert with other guys and ladies within their own work environment, shop size, and that sort of thing. So we now step back and we talk about this great staff that we've built. We now need to give them a place to work. So floor plans are important because it allows you to put these people in an optimal work platform to maximize their efforts. So in a body shop, we're going to use a 10,000 square foot shop as the example. Notice that you've always got a sales department or in a front office. And notice the estimating bay is right next to it. All of us in here are salespeople, and we certainly know that in order to have an opportunity to control the sale, we need a place that is not, quote, out of bounds to do that. An estimating bay is the perfect spot for that. Next, parts. Remember, I said it before, a great body shop has a great parts department, and that needs to be well organized and well manned. Lastly, of course, we have to take care of our employees, and therefore we need to have a break room and a locker room for them. But this is the game changer, 35-65. 65% of the shop is body, 35% is paint. Now think about it, you always have more body men than you do painters. And in that light, we need to be able to maximize their ability to get the work to the paint department. So we start looking at that and looking at the pieces of that pie. Obviously, the body shop in itself will then need to have a place to create the revenue. Now think about this for a moment. Body men don't like two things. They don't like teardowns and they don't like reassemblies. In fact, 80% of the stalls in a collision center occur in reassembly. And they certainly don't want to use their stall space to do a teardown when they're not generating very much revenue in those opportunities. So by having teardown bays, we're not limiting the technicians to their work area, but we're also taking the time to give a timely process to getting the full vision of the pre-collision condition vehicle in place. Think about it this way. In the old days, it was $1,000 a week for revenue to produce for an insurance company. Then about 15 years ago, it was $1,500 a week. Believe it or not, today it's $500 a day. That's a $2,500 severity job that has to be done within 5 days, and that's from the moment it hits your door to the moment it's back in the customer's hands. Now that is an awful lot of activity in a very short amount of time. So teardown bays are optimal because it doesn't take the man's work out of the stall and move the car, but it does allow us to write that job within 1 to 3 hours of possession so that we in fact can order the parts and start working on the car first thing in the morning. So teardown bays are a wonderful attribute to today's best-in-class shop. Now frame, you know, a lot of guys, I walked into a shop and he's got 3 frame racks and it's wonderful. And I said, you know, each one of those bays is $50,000 a month. And he was, well, let's see how much revenue you turn in those 3 bays. And it was about 3%. Or in a $300,000 shop, he was running about $9,000. A bay turns $50,000 a month with a technician. So we get rid of a couple of the frame racks and limit that to the one that we need to handle the work we do. And it's always nice to use that additional space for an alignment rack because it gives you the opportunity to make sure before you begin the job, if you're going to have something structural related to that repair that could stop you later on in reassembly. Of course, an express lane is mandatory. I mean, most of our work is light hits these days. And notice it goes right from the estimating bay, capturing the keys, and into the express bay, onto prep, and then finally into paint. And that is the way of the best shops circuits today. Keep in mind, we also want to include a buff area, but detail is the real key because if we keep our shops clean and we take the time to have the right CFMs, then buffing is pretty much obsolete. And we really want to have that as limited as we can because it adds unnecessary time to the repair process. Let's scorecard your body shop. $500,000, 10,000 square foot shop. 2 booths, each booth does $250,000 a month, approximately 7 cars a day. So when you think about your shop and how you stack up, realize what resources you have. And to maximize them, staffing is critical, and the production that those booths can deliver is right there in front of you. Where do you stand? Another good score to take a look at your starting point for your benchmarks. Next, we're going to talk about my favorite, best practices. Respecting our industry is a cornerstone of being successful in collision. And in collision, every job is custom. So we need to see the pre-collision condition of the vehicle before we begin. Imagine baking a cake and you don't have the recipe and you learn as you go. It'd be pretty hard to get that cake to be consistently coming out the same way every time. So in best practices, our focus is always to reduce cycle time, because that is the need and the call of the industry to be able to build relationships with our insurers. And think about this, it's the only profession in the world that isn't limited to the demographics of the dealer, that in fact the insurance company's demographics become our limiting factor. And there's a lot more of those that we can build relationships with than a single dealer location. He who has the lowest cycle time gets the business. That is the true call of the industry. So what is cycle time? In the insurance mind, it's keys to keys. But that's a really big thing to bite off so that you can perceive all of the dynamics are there to make that operation better. So let's talk about what it really is from an analyst standpoint. From a collision center role, there's 3 pieces to true cycle time. Staging cycle time, where we possess the vehicle before the repair. Production cycle time. Now you think about it. If you gave your technicians the right parts and, more importantly, the space to do the work, they would never be a bottleneck for you. And then notice you have admin at the end for delivery. Here's a freebie for you to take from the seminar. Most shops take 2 days to deliver that car to the customer after it's finished. Certainly 1.5 is on the low side. Why is that? Well, I'll tell you. Writers are afraid to call the customer for pickup until it's sitting out front QC'd and ready to go. Because they're not engaged in the repair, they know the car is going to stall, they don't have that synergy with the technician, so they're literally afraid. But that's cycle time that is totally reducing their appeal to the insurance industry. And it's a very easy one to fix, as we've talked about earlier with teaming. So overall, though, a shop that we've just described, 6 front office people and $300,000 a month, wow, who has the real impact on that overall performance? Clearly, admin has twice the impact. It is us that affect the shop's performance, not the technician. Again, if you give them what they need, they're going to roll with it. So we start talking about the details of this important component that changes the relationships with our insurer, and beginning with cycle time staging. Staging is, I need it authorized. I need mission critical parts to begin the repair. I haven't analyzed this repair, so I clearly don't understand what I need to buy, i.e. blueprint, or perhaps I don't have labor available. Those are the 3 reasons you don't fix a car. You don't have it authorized, you don't have it analyzed, or you haven't accumulated the resources that you need. So staging is the area where admin needs to be very aggressive and very efficient in their efforts in order to get that car physically into production to maintain the requirements on average of 4 hours per man per day per car. And some insurers today are asking for 5. It's a big step from where we were years ago when it was only 2. So take a look at this screen and understand this is the typical shop. They get the car in, and as the car goes through the repair process, that writer we talked about at $100,000 a month keeps going back to the trough. Oops, a missing part. Oops, a wrong part. Oh, a broken part or a sublet forgotten. That happens because it wasn't blueprinted. And therefore, each time he goes back to the trough and adds revenue to the RO, the parts department in many cases has to do the reorder, and that cycle can take hours or days or more on that job each time it happens. So when you think about it, why does it happen in the first place? Well, because we're not respecting all the players that are involved in the repair process. We're living in a vacuum, and that can't be today's best shop. And believe it or not, 1 to 100% of the time, if you go back to your shop and ask your managers how often that happens in their shop, you're going to hear numbers like 75 to 90% of the time those cars stall after the repair begins. And their supplement percentages are anywhere from 20 to 30% when they should be 3. So it is truly understanding the repair before you begin that makes you a better operator. And again, that means including the players. So when you look at this model, where the ticket conceptually is closed before you begin the repair, and you've included all the players, ask yourself an honest question. It's rhetorical, but it's worthy of note. Would a parts guy buy parts better if he saw every part he ever bought before he bought it? I would say yeah. So why aren't we doing that? When 80% of our problems are in parts, it's only 45% of our revenue, and every mistake is $1 off the bottom line and a production issue. So in the new world, the new school of order is that we include the players, and it does take a little longer, 10, 15 minutes longer, but we've now incorporated all of the insights of the people who would normally stop that car. More importantly, we're all about QCing the car at the end of the job. Why in the world are we not QCing the estimate where all the money is? All of us in this room know there's no money in cars. The money is in the paperwork of the car. And when a person puts their signature on a document reflecting their view of that estimate, saying it's right and my agenda is met, it's a game changer. And it becomes a permanent record within the RO. Very exciting. But we need to appreciate that that is the starting point of today's top operators. Next is production cycle time. Notice mirror matching. How humorous that most of the cars stall 80% in reassembly because no one took the time to look at the parts and see if they were right for the job when they received them. Test fitting. best-in-class shops. If you don't test fit, think about it. You're going to find out in reassembly that they don't fit. And again, you're going to be stalled. Obviously, QC is important, and we like to do it in paint and reassembly. But we've got a clean shop, so we're not going to buff like we used to. And because we're operating kind of as more of a professional environment, heck, white smocks and clean floors are really the call of the day, because we're here to do something very professional, and having the right presentation certainly helps that for everyone involved. I said this earlier, I'm going to say it again, because it's something you need to leave with if you only get one nugget from this seminar. A great body shop has a great parts department. And without them doing the mirror matching as often as we can, we are never going to overcome the stall rates that are crushing the net profits of our shops. The parts department will first mirror match from the invoice that he used to make the purchase, checking the PO against the invoice and then the part to make sure everything matches. I bought the left fender, I bought the right headlamp, and I'm verifying that against the invoice. Then we verify it again with the technician, with the actual part, and the technician then signs that they're correct for the job, and he takes ownership of those parts. Think about it for a moment. Every parts department signs an invoice anytime any new inventory comes into his department. And he signs. In the very same way, that asset is then moving from the parts department to an independent contractor, the technician, and another signature is very, very important at this point to make sure that we have ownership and accuracy of what's needed for that car. And then lastly, we test fit. It takes a little bit longer, but man, it'll stop so many of the stalls that affect the overall performance of the shop. And the parts department is right there with you, well-staffed every step of the way. So again, body to paint, paint to body, and at the end of the job. And of course, we QC then as well. Because QCing is important both on the production side, but absolutely paramount on the writing of the pre-collision condition document at the point of blueprint. So delivery cycle time is an easy one to overcome. And think about this. When you go to the dentist, they tell you to be there at 1. You're there at 1. Ladies, you get a manicure or pedicure and your person tells you to be there at 2:30, you're there at 2:30. Why don't we do that in a body shop? Why are all these cars leaving at 5 o'clock and we can never give the customer the attention they deserve to deliver that vehicle and review the work that was done? Well, it's very important to understand we're all just as professional as any other member of the team in any other industry. And so delivering cars when they're ready to go, spaced out so the writer can fully hand that back to the customer and give them the encouragement of the work done that is safe and professional and pre-collision. Very similar to how you all and new car dealers deliver cars to customers. Sometimes you spend as much as an hour bringing those cars back to the customer in a new sale so they can learn all the buttons. Well, in this very same way, we want to do that for our customers. Now, keep in mind, you also need to call them. And you'll have confidence to make those calls when you know you've been involved in the estimate process and the proper safeguards are in place to ensure that it comes out on schedule. So that's why you call the day before and then the morning of, making sure that that customer is there when that car is out front and ready to go. 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. You shouldn't deliver any cars after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And if you make that your commitment, you're going to have lots of time to be able to satisfy the conversations that come when a car is being delivered to a customer. So best practices. We show a wonderful individual who's been Shop of the Year, certainly in the last 4 years, as you see on the screen. And this gentleman has been a committed operator for blueprinting, mirror matching, calling the customer before the pickup. Obviously, daytime deliveries are the norm, and quality assurance is a cornerstone as we go through the parts mirror match process. So with that in mind, best practices is a straightforward group of steps that begins with appreciating that every job is custom, and then making sure that the supply chain and resources thereof are accurate for that repair before we use them, so that when we do get to the point of final assembly, we've got something that goes together on time and on schedule. Take a look at your shop and look at your body men. The average shop in America, remember I had 6 people in the front office? Well, I also have 6 body men and 6 people in the front office. Well, that shop's doing $300,000 a month. That's very common, 6 body men, $300,000 a month. But look at your scorecard, measure your shop and see where you could go. If you were best in class and doing all the things that we've already talked about, your potential is $600,000 a month, literally double from where you are today. So keep that in mind and think about the things that perhaps you're not doing that could hold you back from realizing the full potential of your footprint. So the last piece of this discussion is technology. It is literally the track to run on. Without technology to realize the full benefit of all of these moving parts, keeping everyone on the same page at the same time, it is impossible for you to realize everything this shop can do. You'll just end up with lots of pieces of information, double-entried, payroll, balancing tickets, of course, not knowing anything about parts without giving someone a call, and then balancing that parts price difference between the DMS and the estimating system. Very time-consuming, and obviously something that is not generating any revenue for the shop or the profit to the dealer. So whiteboards, folders everywhere, revenue spiking at the end of the month, phones ringing off the hook, spreadsheets, racks of folders, all traditional stuff that is minimizing the shop's performance. Today, technology is going to change all that. It's the game changer when you've eliminated the islands and pockets of information so no one at any one time can see the whole operation in a cohesive way. That is what we need to move past. And we've done that. And you've done that in our industry today through single point of entry. And one entry where it needs to go, back to estimating, forward into the DMS. All of the players in every department are included. This is why companies like the Reynolds and the CDKs and all of the big DMS providers, Dealer-Built, Dealer-Track, AutoSoft, Automate, they're all great companies. But not one of these major operators provides a system for collision. Why is that? The reason being, too many moving parts and an entire profession unto itself. Look at how many pieces are going on in that shop, and all of that has to be timely, all of it has to be accurate, and everybody then can remain on the same page. And that leads us to the next and most exciting component, that at a single point of entry platform, we can operate for the first time in our lives in real time. Not only are we going to be able to make more decisions on a factor of 10, because the decision process is not the challenge, i.e. the ability to make the decision. The challenge is the ability to collect the information that we need in order to have that decision actually be made. Can you imagine, hey, Charles, that car didn't get to paint until 3, and you wanted it there at 2:30. It texted your phone and told you to go check on it. Or, hey guys, those parts are supposed to be here at noon, but they weren't. Texts your phone and tells you to call your vendor. This thing is operating in real time, knowing your benchmarks, and in turn, allowing you for the first time ever to make better decisions faster, which gives you better results. At the end of the day, we're measuring to manage. So we set a forecast in motion and only make decisions on anything that sets itself out from our forecast model. And in turn, it takes us back to the Harvard Business School, which is their mantra, which is truly the best mantra of every factory in the world. You set a system in motion and only make decisions on exceptions to that plan, i.e. exceptional managers manage by exception. And that is the heart and soul of today's collision center, operating in real time. So we start with a forecast. Imagine parts cycle time. Boy, that's the farthest thing that a parts guy could ever think about, and certainly a writer or technician. But now you'll know today, in today's technology available to you, you will know not only when you asked that part to be ordered, but how long it took the parts person to order it. And then not only that, but when, by day and time of day, it's going to arrive in your shop. And if it doesn't, it'll notify you and tell you to call your vendor. Or perhaps production cycle time. Could you imagine that today's technology is going to tell you where the car is going to be in production on any given day of the repair cycle? Based on hours worked per man per day per car, integrating admin days, sublet days, partial work days, holidays and weekends, based on your insurance contract. So you truly are running on the track that they want you to run on in order to meet their cycle time requirements. How about projected delivery dates? Again, all based on severity. Again, all based on the number of days that are going to be in the shop. And that has to be consistent with the cycle time requirement of how many hours per man per day per car. So collision typing, number of days in the shop, projected delivery dates, all of these go back to an accurate blueprint because it's looking at the number of hours in body, paint, frame, and mechanical, overall dollar value size of parts, and then overall dollar value size of the ticket. Without having the right hours and the right categories, you're never going to get the right projected delivery date or production cycle or number of days in the shop or an accurate severity. Everything blows up if we don't start off on the right foot. Best practices are a cornerstone, but once you've got them under your belt, then the technology of today takes off and takes you to the next level. Take a look at this. It now allows to load level the shop. If you don't load level, how can you schedule? If you're not turning time as the car moves through production, how in the world do we know when we can bring the next car in? And you need to load level everything, because if we don't know our capacity, how are we ever going to understand where our end game is going to be? So load leveling technicians, writers, and departments is a fundamental step at being able to maximize that shop's performance. And in turn, our next one of my personal favorites, is a love call. A love call is a call made to a customer to show consideration. Realize if you don't call that customer, the delivery process is very hard, especially if things aren't exactly right. But by maintaining a contact with the customer, they don't see you as just the vendor. They see you through rose-colored glasses, and therefore it makes the delivery process much easier. Also, the newest technology that's come out in the market is priority definitions. So for the first time in the world, we're going to know what cars to fix, what parts to buy, who to call, and the best order we can do those things to both impact cycle time and customer service. So a priority system is mandatory. So when you take a look at it, the end game has to be easy to use, single point of entry. Obviously, it's going to have to be powerful and global to handle all the details of these many moving parts. And then it's going to have multiple platforms of technology support. And there are many products in today's market that do just that. And that's what you need to be looking to as you take on this component of that free three-phased approach to running the very best body shop. Clearly, wireless is a given because we need to be at the point of the information and allow it to disseminate throughout our system. And obviously, we're always going to be paperless. Because if you're not paperless, we're going to have islands of information again. And we always want to stay on the same page all the time. And that's going to eliminate some huge roadblocks. Many shops spend hundreds of hours balancing tickets, double entry of parts, obviously doing payroll, and dealing with the dynamics of paper and confusion. So this is all going to be part of the past, and the future is going to have transparency. So we can all see what's going on. It'll have accountability because it'll have date and time stamps at everything that takes place for projections and for actual tasks completed. Again, no more questions about parts or how many hours did I flag or when is the car coming in or what do I do next, because the technology is taking care of all of those things. And that's the game changer when you maintain your best practices. So we've maximized our efficiency. We have absolutely increased our speed and accuracy of information. And ultimately, we have had a data distribution model that works through how? Yes, apps. The world has become mobile. And in that, apps become the core of what helps us distribute this information in a timely manner to all the necessary parties. So let's take a look at some of the different players that are doing this type of task. Always begin with the estimator, and the estimator is going to be the front end of the operation. He's going to go out and write at the car. Now you think about that. In the old days, they'd write a piece of paper, then they'd go back to their desk, and they would then begin to translate that information into the computer. But unfortunately, when they do that, the words on the page are different than what's on the screen. So all of a sudden, we've started off on the wrong foot, and by the time that individual has written that estimate at the car and carried it back to the front office to sit at his desk or her desk, they've been interrupted 2 or 3 times. They've forgotten a couple of key pieces of information, and they've really started off on the wrong foot, which is going to ensure these cars are going to stall. But when we write at the car, we're at the source of that information, and we can have eye contact with it and document as it happens. And that is an absolute assurance of quality information going into the right place at the right time. Next thing we have is we're checking the customer in. Now again, we're at the customer site, at the car, sitting out front of our office, and we're able to not break that bond that's growing between you and the customer. We're able to get the key information, provide them with copies, do their prior damage. But again, this is the only time they still love you before anything's gone wrong, the optimal time for an upsell, where you can ensure on average of 2% net profit increase, so you can genuinely see the benefit of having additional revenue streams. And I'll give you a little tidbit that we use in our 20 group. Our upsell that some of the men use, which is very convenient, very profitable, is simply clearing the headlamps, doing a headlamp restoration. Also, it's an easy sell, and it's something that's convenient because it can happen in the paint department. There are many other ways to do upsells. Obviously, during the prior damage review, it's an optimal time to take care of the dings and scratches in the car. And it's a great way for you to let that customer see their car as it was before any of these things took place. Pre-collision condition. Wonderful. Ultimately, though, you're standing out front, and now you've advanced that car from, "Hi, Mrs. Smith, I'm dropping off my car," and we call that the drop-off process, to the next phase of admin, i.e. staging, which we talked about earlier, and that is into blueprinting. So while I'm out front, having that conversation, getting the customer's information back to them as a PDF, emailing that thing to them while getting their email and their cell phone and all of that, which all goes up to the cloud and updates the system, it's also advancing the car for other departments to take the next step from an admin standpoint. As we learned earlier, it's admin that is our bane, and we have to really focus on that to get everything we need accurate and ready to go for the technician. So next we see we've gotten our signatures, we've done the upsell, and of course, using the prior damage sheet, a great tool to do that. Ultimately sending copies and photographs into the RO, copies of everything to the customer, and we've moved on to really what I consider the most significant game changer in our mobile world that's available today in the industry, and that is the mobile walk-around, where they can collect all the data that they used to do with a pen and paper and a spreadsheet, go back to their desk, key it all in, then print it all out, and then hand it all out. All of that's gone away in the new world of mobile walk-around. So what we've done is first do an inventory every day to make sure we've missed none of our cars. We've prioritized the work for the technician on the walk-around, define what tasks they're going to do, and when the time limit that task should be done. We've assigned labor and dispatching, added notes to the RO, pictures of anything that could have been missed, and we also trigger our customer service all while we're on the walk-around. And that is a game changer. So it lists the cars in the inventory that you see, whether they're in staging, production, filtered by writer and technician. It then allows you to set the tasks that are available for that repair based on the blueprint. That's right. So we know exactly what needs to be done to that car, and now we can set the tasks when they're to be done. We can look at the actual repair order and what needs to be done as far as the labor side, assigning of labor, status of parts. Imagine everybody is going to have that question answered. Are they here yet? And when did they arrive by date and time? Or are they coming? And when are they going to arrive by date and time? So everyone's going to know everything they need to know, and it's going to be right at the point of sale, specifically at the vehicle during the walk around while the inventory is being taken place. And to top it all off, anything going on in the parts department or production related is documented right here and right now. Because the parts department, for instance, something very big that's hurting all of us is core charges. And in those core charges, it's often forgotten in penetrating down to not only the production manager, but the technician, and they throw them away. And it's a very hard place to be right now, especially in a larger footprint. You've got to get that information down in a timely manner so that it isn't destroyed or thrown out. And now it is. By the creation of that core charge, it also reflects on the tablets for the production and the technician. Taking notes, no longer have to type. Can notes, as many as you like, and you simply touch the things that you repetitively do, so you don't have to keep typing over and over again, and only using the typing for unique situations that are one and done on very specific cars. And lastly, setting a priority, when you want the man to do it and what order you want them to do it to both accomplish the time schedule and the load of that department. All the way down to setting the time limit, and ultimately even being able to change the date that car will be done, moving it down the calendar to the new due date, and triggering a phone call to the customer, all while you're on this walk around. Very exciting stuff. And this then allows for additional photographs on top of everything else if they find new damage to the car while they're on their trek around their inventory analysis, i.e. the daily walk around. Now, what's exciting now is that all of this in the old days would have to go back, be documented. Then you'd sit down and you'd print all your reports. And then you'd have a morning meeting and you'd hand everything out and hope everybody gets it. But that morning meeting is a false sense of security. For one moment, we're in a huddle, we say everything we know, and as soon as we break from that meeting, everything changes. Cars move, parts come in, new things happen. It's not the kind of security that's today's collision center. When that walk around is done, technicians push one button and they know everything they're supposed to do, the priorities, the timetables. They can see if the parts are here, how many hours they flagged. They can take photographs. They see the labor worksheet they're going to be using for the repair. And it's changed everything. First and foremost, they know exactly what to do and when it's expected of them. They have the details of their parts and of their labor. And ultimately, they have the notes that are associated with this all the way down from the parts department to the production manager's needs and requests. And lastly, they can add to it. They can add photographs as well today so that if they find something new, they can get that up into the front office very quickly. And again, apps are the streamlining of today's data collection and data distribution, and it takes itself all the way over to the new paperless platform. In the old days, 10 keystrokes in 2 minutes, and you're physically attached to a PC with a scanner, put the paper in, go to the RO, open it up, scan, about a minute, boom, you're done, kick out of the ticket, it's about 10 keystrokes, and anywhere from 40 to 60 seconds minimum. Well, today, you simply hit a button, it labels the document, you're fully mobile, and it's in the job jacket while you're in your place where the information resides. As an example, you're getting a credit memo signed by the runner. Take a picture, it's in the job jacket. An invoice comes into the shop. Take a picture, it's in the job jacket. Fully streamlined now for data collection to run in a paperless platform. So again, for review, staffing, the right people in the right job descriptions to maximize the flow of information, accuracy and timeliness of that information. Best practices, absolutely paramount to being consistent in execution of those best practices on a daily basis to realize the full potential of the shop. And finally, the technology that is needed to realize that connectivity, that single point of entry, and that efficiency that comes from not only the technology and the integration to the DMSs, but also the data collection and data distribution that comes from mobile technology. So that's how you get a 30 to 50% increase. And that's how you'll end up getting 8 to 12 on the net. So thank you so much for letting me have this time with you today, and have a blessed day.